Hi, my name is Sam. I'm 21 years old. I was born and raised as a Jehovah's Witness. I left about a year and a half ago. Um, I wanted to make one of these videos because I felt like, there's people out there that are in similar situations to me, and especially the situation that I was in a year and a half ago. So I wanted to make this video just to put my story out there, so that, if there's anyone out there that's struggling, just to know that they're not alone. There's people in similar situations to them. It was one of these videos that helped me when I was going through my waking up process. It actually started my waking up process. Um, so I figured, you know, this would be the best way to tell my story one last time, start to finish. I've kind of made the decision recently that I want to kind of put this in my past, put my past behind me and just move forward with my life. But I figured I'd tell my story one last time. Um, so basically, I guess the best place to start is the beginning. Both my parents were more or less raised as witnesses. I grew up in the greater Atlanta area in Georgia. Um, my parents met when they were pioneering, got married, had me. So I was raised from birth as a witness. My earliest memories, of course, are going to the meetings, going out in service, hot summer days. Um, you know, as a kid, it was always, from a young age put into my head all the teachings. My mother's side, I'm a fifth generation. I was a fifth generation witness. So we go way back with the religion. And so pretty much everyone in my family is involved in one way or another. So, we were heavily involved from day one. Um, and at first I was, very, very into it. I became an unbaptized publisher when I was 7 years old. Um, I'll be at every meeting. We were out in service every weekend. I have every book study. Um, and my mother raised me and my sister pretty much by herself. My dad got divorced to my mom when I was about 5 years old. He got disfellowshipped, moved far away. I didn't see him very often. Um, so my mom basically raised us herself. So, I mean, hats off to her, because I wouldn't be half the man that I am today if it wasn't for her. All the effort that she put in raising me and my sister the best way she knew how. Um, you know, growing up as a witness, I'm sure if you're watching this video, you're familiar with it. There's a lot of isolation that goes into that. So, I had good friends in the hall when I was a little kid, but I always had friends, at school and stuff that I always just felt like I never fully connected with, And that's a story we've all heard plenty of times. What I will say is that I don't think my childhood was a bad one. I never felt myself really wanting more when I was a young kid. We always had everything we needed. My mom always did her best to make sure we had everything we needed, even when times were tough, because I know we weren't well off in any sense of the word, but she always made sure that we had everything we needed. And I was an overachiever as a kid. I used to get perfect grades in school. They put me in like a special gifted children's program when I was in elementary school. And, even in the hall, I was always an overachiever. I would give comments at young ages. Like I said, I was an unbaptized publisher when I was 7 years old. So I was always like, tried to be one step ahead. I was trying to make sure everyone liked me in the hall. But I would say everything really changed. Sorry about my voice, I've got allergies. But I would say everything everything really took a huge change when I was about 11 or 12 years old. My mom um, got into a long distance relationship with a guy that lives here in Connecticut. And I can remember not really thinking much of it at the time. It didn't really click with me. But before I knew it, they were getting married, and my whole life was getting uprooted. And we're moving 1,000 miles away from where I grew up, where my whole family was, where all my friends were. My entire life was just dissolved all at once. I had to start over. And we moved into a very affluent area. Where I come from is also very ethnically diverse. We moved to a very not ethnically diverse neighborhood. So it was a lot of culture shock to me at first. The people in the hall were nice enough. There weren't a lot of kids my age. There were kids that were older than me and kids that were younger than me, but there were like no kids my age. So I had trouble making friends for a long time. And even at school, the curriculum here is a lot more difficult than it was in Atlanta. So while I was making perfect grades down south, I came up here and I was making B's, C's, and D's, and I couldn't keep up. These kids were several years ahead of me. And I began to lose interest in school altogether, at some point. But at the same time, I started investing myself more into the witness faith. I started to apply myself more. Not necessarily in like the belief system, but in the congregation. I would reach out, do everything I could, help out where I could. I got baptized when I was 14. And it was the same kind of situation. I didn't have a personal study routine, anything to that nature. It was more of like I just felt like I had to do it, I felt like in order to be approved of, it was just something that I had to do. So I did it. And looking back, I did it for the wrong reasons, obviously, but looking back, I wish that I just hadn't done it at all and waited until I was ready, I guess. But anyways, I made friends with the people that were older than me in the hall. And I was one of the only kids that actually went to public school. Pretty much everyone else was homeschooled. So they all started pioneering when they were like 15, 16 years old. So they would always be taking me out in service with them, like after school. I would always auxiliary pioneer on summer break. So I would spend a lot of time with the kids that were older than me, and it was a lot of fun, I didn't necessarily like going out in service. I just liked hanging out with my friends, because it was fun. We would always go out together. But that was also around the time, when I was getting through middle school, getting into my high school years, when I started having some doubts. Like I said, I didn't like going out in the ministry. The meetings were just kind of boring to me. I wasn't studying. And I would always think about what if I had been born into a family that wasn't witnesses? What if I was like the kids at school that I was friends with? Because when I started high school, I didn't have any friends in middle school, really. So I went to a high school in a different town, and I started making a lot of friends. And, I liked them a lot. They weren't bad people. I started realizing, these aren't bad people, These are good people. They use, bad language and stuff, but I did too, so it's it wasn't a huge deal to me. I was like, what makes these people so different from the friends that I have at the hall? But regardless, I continued, kept going out in service, kept making my appearances. I started handling mics, I got into doing magazines and stuff. Then when I was around 16 or 17 years old, all these doubts started piling up in the back of my head, but I would always push them aside, the good little Christian boy I was. When I was 16 or 17, I met this girl in my hall, And, I liked her a little bit. So eventually got her number, started talking. Before I knew it, we were kind of dating. And like, I don't know if you're familiar with like the dating rules in the witnesses organization, but I mean, it really depends on where you live. I was in a fairly conservative hall. So at that age, everyone was kind of like, what are you doing? Like you're messing up right now. You're going to end up doing something you regret. But I mean, we got away with it for a while without anyone noticing. I mean, my parents figured out pretty quickly, and they were totally against it. I mean, there was this one point where they even took my cell phone away, and you were like, well, you're never getting this back. So I sold some of my personal belongings and secretly bought a cell phone so I could continue talking to this girl. But we went to the same high school, so we see each other a lot anyways. But around that time, I was making more friends at school. I was relatively popular at school. So I knew a lot of people. And, I was having a good time. I was happy. Prior to that, when I was around 15, I went through a bout of depression. There were days where I couldn't even get up, go to school in the morning. It was difficult to do mundane tasks. But around that time when I got into my sophomore and junior year in high school, I started to feel better. And I was still continuing to do a lot in the hall. I was giving a lot of parts in the meetings and stuff. And as I went forward, as I got into my senior year in high school, I really started to get serious with this girl. And I was like, all right, well, you know how it works with the witness dating. It's like, if you're dating someone, it's because you want to get married to them. So I was like, all right, well, if I'm going to marry this girl, I better get a good job. So I went to a technical high school, so I studied plumbing, heating, and cooling. And so I graduated high school and got a job in that field, full-time job in that field right away. And I just started saving some money, getting ready to start a life with this girl, because she was a year behind me, so she wouldn't graduate till the next year. So I was like, well, I better start a base now. And then around, year 2017, next year, beginning of the year, my girlfriend was like, hey, I think we should really pioneer together. Like, I think that's a good thing to do, while we're still dating. It's like, all right. So I quit my full-time job, and in March of that year, I started pioneering. And that was a huge, huge change for me because, like I said, I didn't like going into ministry. But I was having these doubts, and I was like, you know what? I think the best way to become spiritually strong is to just immerse myself in this religion, put myself in a place where it's like 24/7. That's all I got to think about. So I started doing personal study. Started going out in the ministry all the time. And, believe it or not, it made me hate ministry even more than before, because now I wasn't going out with just my friends anymore. Now I was going out with people, the other people in the hall, the people that I came to find out I didn't really like very much. I made a lot of great friends in that time, and I met a lot of people I liked, but there were a few people that I didn't like very much that I ended up with a lot in the ministry. And, I was happy at the time because my girlfriend graduated high school and we started pioneering together. And, I was happy then, I would say, but I still didn't like the ministry at all. And I was still struggling with these doubts. And I was like, if I'm going to marry this girl, I got to be spiritually strong. What am I going to do? So I vamped up my personal study. I started praying for the first time ever on a regular basis. And what I noticed was that summer, that was the summer where everything changed. The summer of 2017 was when my life took that big switch, you know, because I noticed like the more effort I put in, the less I was getting out of it. So, like, you know, I just didn't like the ministry more. The more I went out, the less I liked the ministry. I was getting more responsibilities, and it was just stressing me out more. You know, I was studying more, and I just was getting more doubts. So, in that summer, I think this was in September of 2017, I noticed my girlfriend starting to get distant. And she went away for a little while, visited her family in another state, and like she just didn't talk to me the whole time she was gone. And I was like, oh shit, something's about to happen. So she came back and was like, listen, I don't think I'm ready for this relationship, this and that. We're done. Out of nowhere, just blindsided me. And you know, it was like all the decisions I had made in the year or two before that had been for the sake of that relationship. And now it was just out the window. And so here I was, you know, in shock, first of all. And then I just had this decision in front of me, like, look, I'm a young guy, you know, being a young male in that religion, you can go all the way to the top if you put your mind to it. So I was like, all right, well, I could do that. I could go to Bethel. I could become a CO. I could do whatever. Or I could start addressing these doubts that I'm having, take a step back. And, you know, for a couple months, I didn't really do anything, you know, anything different, I should say. I was still going to the meetings. I was still going out in service all the time, still had all these responsibilities, still giving talks. You know, there were whispers about me becoming a ministerial servant, but I just couldn't make my mind up. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And at the same time, I was still like going out in service all the time with this girl that just broken up with me after 2 years of being together. And I was like, miserable. And so one night I was just browsing YouTube because I love to watch YouTube. And I think to this day, I think it was just fate that it was put in front of me. But in my recommended feed was EXJW 5th's life story. Now, not sure if you're familiar with him or not, but he's an EXJW activist, makes videos. And I love his channel. Shout out to him. Woke me up, man. But anyways, I saw this video and I was like, what does that mean? What does EXJW mean? Because I had never seen that word before, you know. Like, to me, it was like you're either in, you're disfellowshipped, you're inactive, or you're an apostate. It was like, there was no such thing as an EXJW. So I was curious. So I started watching it. And it was just like this heartfelt story. His story was so heartfelt. And I saw myself in it because he was in the same kind of situation as me, because he was a young single guy, but he went a lot further than me, and, you know, actually went to Bethel, was a ministerial servant and stuff, and it still all fell apart in the end. So I was thinking to myself, like, well, this is incredible. So then, you know, going on to the recommended feed, there it is, a dozen more videos. I spent that entire night watching videos, and every single one of them had me in tears, because these people were all experiencing the same doubts that I was. They were all in this same kind of like twilight zone that I was in at the time. And it was just like, it was incredible to me. And so that was the big turning point right there. This was in October of 2017. So the next step, I was like, okay, I finally kind of made my decision. I'm just gonna step back and figure this thing out. So come like November or so, I had basically just stopped going to the meetings, and I was watching these videos, and they were just eye-opening to me. And I was like, okay, I need to do some research. Okay, that's what everyone says they do research. So I was like, I don't want to read anything opinionated. I want to get professional opinion. So the first thing I did went to, I guess it's kind of counterintuitive to that, but I went to jw.org. Well, first I wrote down all the doubts, all the questions that I had. I went to jw.org, watched our online library, looked them all up. I mean, I already knew the answers I was going to get, so it wasn't anything surprising. I didn't get any satisfying answers. So I was like, okay, well, let's go elsewhere then. So then I started seeking like professional opinions about these questions I was having. So like archaeologists and, psychologists and philosophers, like what people that, unbiased opinions, not opinion, unbiased, like facts, answers to these questions. And, I was starting to get some satisfying answers, and the thing is, they weren't really lining up with that teaching that I've been getting my whole life. So, I was like, all right. So I remembered from EXJW 5th's video that he had gone to the Wikipedia page and looked up the criticisms of the Jehovah's Witness religion. So I did that, and I read through it, and it was jaw-dropping. I saw things in there I had never heard of before. And I started researching them. I was like, holy shit, there's like all this is happening. And I had no idea. It was all happening right under my nose. Things like the Australian Royal Commission and, just the whole process of the hiding of pedophiles and not reporting abuse to police and stuff. Like, I had no idea this stuff existed. And I was reading all these news articles and like things about trials and all this money and stuff. I was like, what is going on, man? And so then one day I just Googled the word EXJW, and of course found the subreddit. So I started going through one by one, reading people's stories, reading people's sentiments that they had. And I realized, like, these people aren't angry or bitter, or mentally diseased or anything like that. These people are genuine people, genuine concerns that are having genuine problems. And a lot of them are in the same situation as me. Here I am, I'm stuck at home. I'm stuck in this religion, and like, I didn't know what I was gonna do, but it was so comforting to see that so many people were in the same situation as me. And at the time, I wasn't going to any meetings. I wasn't going out in service anymore. And people are starting to figure it out. And I'll never forget this day. My mom came into my room one night in November of 2017. It was the night of the Wednesday night meeting. It was an hour before the meeting. She saw that I still had my clothes on, my normal clothes on. And she was like, all right, what's going on? What's wrong with you? And it was as if like somebody else was talking out of my mouth. Like, I don't remember thinking of these words. They just came out of my mouth. I just said straight up, cold turkey, I don't want to go to meetings anymore. And like, it was like surprising to me when I heard it, but I just saw this look on her face that I will never forget. I still see it sometimes in my sleep. It's this look of shock, terror, disappointment. It was like I had just told her that I had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And I said, like, look, I don't really believe in this anymore. I've done a lot of research, and I just don't believe that this is the truth anymore. I don't really want anything to do with it. And, we said some words back and forth, but it was just mostly just sitting there staring at each other, just out of shock. And, I knew, like, right at that point, I was thinking to myself, holy shit, what did I just do, man? I just ruined my life with one sentence. I just completely destroyed everything that I knew about my life in one sentence. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like, I'm a pioneer. Like, I'm about to become a ministerial servant. And I just told my mom I want to leave. Like, what am I doing? And that was just my thought process for a while. And all around the same time, just like to add to the stress of that, I started hanging out with this girl that I worked with. And, we started dating a little bit. And, I kind of laid out my whole situation to her. And she said something to me that just completely, it was like a switch flipped in my head. She was like, that sounds like a pretty messed up organization that you're in right now. And it's an unfortunate situation. But at the end of the day, the only person that you have is you. You're the only person that you have to live up to. And, she said, I think you already know what decision you're going to make. It's just a very scary one. So you're just avoiding it. And I remember thinking to myself, like, damn, I had never really gotten an opinion from someone that was on the outside before. Somebody that had nothing to do with the religion. So that was just eye-opening to me. From that point forth, I was just like, if I'm going to do this, I got to do it for the right reason. I got to do it because, I need to be genuine to myself. If I can't stand for it, I can't stand for it. If I can't be a part of this religion, then I can't be a part of it. I'm not going to fake it anymore. And I think probably a close second to that time with my mom was telling my sister, because we had been best friends for the longest time, and as long as I could remember, and telling her that, and she was just crying, and it makes me sad still, So basically, I'd made the decision, okay, I gotta leave. And around that same time, my parents sat me down. My mom and her husband sat me down and said, all right, so look, if you can live here, but you have to follow the rules of this house, and the rules of the house are the rules of the Jehovah's Witnesses, and you have to at least make an effort. You have to go to some meetings. And I'm like, I don't want to go to another meeting ever. Like, I don't want anything to do with this anymore. So it didn't take long, a couple of weeks. And of course, I inevitably broke one of their rules. And, at that point, like, everyone was so stressed out. There was so much tension in the household that I was just like, you know what? Before they can even kick me out, I'm just going to leave. Because I just feel like that would be what's best for everyone's mental health at this point. So I called up a friend of mine from high school. Now, I hadn't talked to this friend since I graduated high school. Since graduation day, I hadn't spoken a word to this man. And, I didn't expect a response back, but this was one of the first times that I experienced unconditional love outside the religion. And that was an eye-opening experience for me, because I was like, hey man, I got nowhere else to go. And without even hesitating, he was like, yeah, pack your things, come live with me. As long as you need to, I got you, man. And that was just like, it had me in tears. Knowing that somebody that I hadn't spoken to in so long didn't even give a reason as to why I dropped him. He just took me back like that. And, I wish I had done things differently. I wish that I had left on better terms with my family, because that did some damage that will never be replaced, that will never be fixed, Like, they still bring it up to this day. And, I packed my shit. And one night, the next day I was gone. I hugged my mom and my sister goodbye, and I was gone. And if they're watching, it's possible. If you're watching, please know that I love you all very much. You mean the world to me. You always have. And, just because you don't agree with my personal decisions in life, I just need you to know that I'll always be there for you and I'll always love you, no matter what. So, I left, moved in with my friend. I wasn't making enough money at the time because I still had a pioneer job part-time to live on my own. So I had to get a second job, save my money. In a few months, I got my own place. And the rest is history. I mean, today, like I said, I've kind of chosen to put my past behind me because it is painful. I went through a long period after I left, especially when I first lived on my own. Because when I was living with my friend, we had a lot of fun together, but when I started living on my own, it was just so lonely, because all my friends were gone. I was starting from square one, from scratch. And that was devastating to me. And, I started to get depressed again for a while. But eventually I was able to, once I was able to convince myself, like, you're not making a wrong decision here. That wasn't a wrong choice. You did what you felt was best for yourself, to be genuine to yourself. And so, I started to rebuild myself. So I actually feel like now I'm a better person than when I was a pioneer witness, a year and a half ago. So yeah, I've decided to move on with my life at this point. I'm planning on moving back to Atlanta, my hometown, at the end of this month, basically. So that's kind of like, that's it, that's going to be my clean start. Because I still live within 10 minutes of all the people that I left behind, my family, and of, the Kingdom Hall and everything. It hasn't gotten any easier. I see people around a lot, and, as far as my family goes, I'm still on speaking terms with some of them. My mom will still talk to me if I initiate it. I'll go to visit her fairly often. My sister doesn't want anything to do with me anymore. She won't even speak to me. Actually, besides my mom, that's pretty much it. And, yeah, that's where I'm at. What's funny is that my dad, my biological father, has been my closest family member since I left. I talk to him pretty much every day. Even though he lives in Atlanta now, which I'm going down to live with him. And he's been a huge help to me mentally. And when I felt alone, what I will say is that now I've come to peace. I've come to terms with a lot of this, and I'm at peace with myself now. I'm happy now. I'm happy with the decisions that I've made. I'm happy with the person that I've become. I'm happy that I've got my whole life ahead of me. I'm 21 years old, I'm young. Got my whole life ahead of me. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the prospects that lay ahead of me. And to all those people out there that are struggling, that are in that situation where you feel like you're stuck. You feel like you're stuck in this religion. You're not. There's always a way out. It may not seem like it, but there is. And it's painful. There's no easy way. Any way you go, there's going to be consequences, and it's going to be painful. And you're going to lose some people, and it's devastating. But you gotta find friends. I've been fortunate enough to make a number of good friends, lifelong friends over the last year or so. And you got to build that network, that support network. You got to get therapy if you need it, because it's not easy. It's life-changing. It's devastating just to learn the truth. So, I mean, stay strong. It's not an easy path, but it's worth it. I wouldn't trade being able to think freely, think for myself, act for myself, not feel constantly guilty, constantly as if I have to apologize. I wouldn't trade that for the world. I have no desire to go back to living that way. It's worth it. I thank you for listening to my story. Hopefully this is the last time I'll ever have to sit down and just lay it all out. Because I need a fresh start, So, I hope you all have a great day, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.